Thank you for joining us. I'm Marnie Hughes in Chicago, and welcome to our ongoing missing series here at NewsNation. We are focusing this morning on the disappearance of a Navajo elder whose case sparked a national outcry about the high number of missing and murdered Indigenous people, and also the lack of attention often paid to these cases. In a moment, an attorney working pro bono on these types of cases will be joining us as part of our live discussion today. And if you have any questions, I always welcome you to join in this ongoing conversation and be part of it. A comment's welcome as well. This week's case centers around a mother and a grandmother from Arizona. Her name is Ella Mae Begay. She was 62 years old when she disappeared in the middle of the night. That was on June 15th, 2021. In an effort to get help with the search efforts, her niece walked all the way from Arizona to Washington, D.C. 2 years later, her family still has not been able to bring Ella Mae home. Last month, there was a development, and they were able to address the man accused of hurting her aunt inside a federal courtroom.
Put us through pain a year and 10 months. Just tell us where my aunt is.
The niece of Ella Mae Begay, with an anguished plea to 23-year-old Preston Tolth, charged with assault and carjacking in connection with her aunt's disappearance. For generations, the Navajo grandmother was renowned for her distinct style of native woven rugs, sold far and wide on the internet.
They call it a pictorial rug, which is like a picture. You know, she had that in her head and, she put that into the rugs.
Begay lived alone in this isolated ranch on the Navajo reservation in Arizona. On June 15, 2021, her prized Ford F-150 was seen leaving her house at 2:30 in the morning. Her niece, angry, because she says police didn't immediately call it a kidnapping.
She was 62 years old. What 62-year-old drives off at that time of night and not nobody be concerned?
My mom is a really cautious person. She doesn't just up and leave in the middle of the night. She was afraid to drive after dark.
After days of searching, Navajo police announced a person of interest, Preston Tolth, had been located in New Mexico, and they transitioned the case to a foul play investigation.
Despite the transition, the Navajo Police Department and our associated partners through the Navajo Division of Public Safety and associated law enforcement programs remain committed to an outcome of resolution for the family of Ella Mae Begay.
But Begay's family couldn't help noticing the stark contrast to another case getting national attention at the time.
This was an extensive search, 25 FBI agents.
Hundreds of investigators searching multiple states for Gabby Petito, and the media reporting every development while they searched alone.
We don't have detectives. We don't have a special task force. We don't have the resources. We don't have the money for it.
Frustrated, Seraphine Warren started walking to clear her mind and raise awareness.
When this happened, I just wanted my aunt back. So when I did this walk, it was to get help, resources.
Marking the one-year anniversary of Ella Mae's disappearance, Warren set out walking all the way to Washington, D.C.
Kentucky into West Virginia is where I'm going. I have 2 more miles left to go.
Along the way, greeted by supporters and other families of missing or murdered loved ones, adding ribbon after ribbon with names to her prayer staff. In D.C., she was invited to meet with the Secretary of the Interior, Deb Haaland, the first Native American cabinet member who has pushed to reduce violence against Native women. But even that meeting left Warren feeling deflated.
I don't know what's going to happen. Didn't really promise me anything.
Then 2 months ago, a surprise. Federal prosecutors charged Preston Tolth with carjacking and assault resulting in serious bodily harm, saying he admitted to taking Ella Mae's truck and striking her in the face multiple times.
This walk that I did really did do something then, because or else nothing would have been done.
The U.S. Attorney's Office promising new efforts to solve cases involving missing and murdered Indigenous people.
The department, as well as other districts within Indian Country, recognize this as a significant issue and are putting resources and time and attention to solving it.
Now, as Begay's family awaits the trial and hopes they eventually get answers to bring Ella Mae home, Seraphine feels her presence everywhere.
I keep seeing the same bird, and it's the color of her hair. And it makes me feel better to know what she's telling me, keep doing it, like you're in the right direction.
Continue the pursuit of answers, and for many of these families, the hope of closure. Joining me now is Darlene Gomez. She's a Native American attorney who works pro bono to help families like Ella Mae's keep the pressure on law enforcement in so many of these cases. Thank you so much for giving us some of your time. Why was it important for you to get involved with Ella Mae's disappearance and case and some others that you're working as well?
So my journey on the MMIWR field has been a long time coming. One of my childhood friends went missing on St. Patrick's Day in 2001. Her name is Melissa Ann Montoya, and she is from the Hickory Apache Nation, and she is still missing today.
And why are so many of these cases, Darlene, going unsolved for so long? Where does the problem start?
You know, there's just numerous systematic issues. One of them has to do with jurisdiction. One has to do with the lack of funding, both for federal law enforcement officers, tribal law enforcement officers, and the Bureau of Indian Affairs officers. You also have lack of training. You have lack of resources as far as individual Native American tribes that don't have their own 911 system. You have large areas where you cannot receive cell service. The radios that law enforcement uses oftentimes are not able to work. And then if you look at most agencies that work Indian Country, they're staffed at about 25%. And when you look at, sorry.
No, that's okay, go ahead.
If you look at FBI agents who work Indian Country is considered a hardship. So you have a lot of young FBI agents. You have FBI agents who have never worked with Native Americans or Alaskan Natives. So it's very difficult for the community to have trust and to bond with them. And really, we are not seeing any community policing efforts with the FBI and even the Bureau of Indian Affairs.
So ultimately, I want to understand sort of the challenge here is when someone, and in many cases it's young women that go missing. In Ella Mae's case, as she is an elder, there's a lot of bureaucracy, there's a lot of red tape, there's almost too many organizations and jurisdiction issues that involve the challenges and the complexity of it?
That's correct. And you also have to remember that, say, the Navajo Nation, their reservation is over 1 million acres. Sometimes you may only have 5 officers on duty, and there's 7 regions on that Navajo Nation. So you may be waiting 2, 3, 4, or 5 days for a police officer to answer your call. And because of the remoteness of the actual police stations on the reservation, oftentimes nobody is manning them. So to actually get a person who's going to take a report, that can be tremendously hard to do.
Right, and that was a lot of the frustration in Ella Mae's case. Her family early on said there wasn't enough attention or urgency paid to her case. Let's talk specifically about what happened to her. It's been 2 years. At what point did you get involved with the family, and what did the evidence show? And Tolth, who is now behind bars facing trial in her death, what's the status of that proceeding?
So I started working with the family in September of 2021 when I met Seraphine at a rally I was having for another murdered missing Indigenous woman by the name of Pepita Redhair. And so even at that 3-month mark, the FBI and Navajo Nation criminal investigators had named Preston Tolth a person of interest. So at that time, the FBI was working that case.
Is there any doubt in Ella Mae's family's minds that she was killed?
At this point, I know that they were holding out hope that because her body had not been found, that maybe she was out there and she was alive. But after Preston Toth appeared in federal court, they know that she is no longer in this world.
And now they want to be able to bring her home, find her remains. What is the status of searches on the reservation? Are they still happening?
We have met with the FBI and U.S. Attorney's Office through a phone call, and the FBI has made their commitment to start a new search sometime in the upcoming weeks and trying to use more agencies to help search for Ella Mae's body. One of the concerns that the FBI did have is that they don't have any credible places where they believe Preston Toth has told them the truth of where her body is.
And this is also a very large area, so the possibilities are endless.
Correct. And I think what they're starting to plan on is a very specific search near Ella Mae's home and kind of searching off roadways into arroyos.
Do they have cooperation, the FBI, with those on the reservation to do a search like that? Is that complicated?
It's very complicated because of all the jurisdictional issues. The FBI has stated that they are able and willing and would like to work with the Navajo Nation Police Department, with the Bureau of Indian Affairs. So it's our hope that they will be able to work together to do a search.
You brought up, Darlene, MMIWR, which is the Missing Murdered Indigenous Women and Relatives Task Force. I know New Mexico has one. Other states have one as well. What has that done to help provide families like Ella Mae's the resources they need to search in these cases?
Well, although we have these Murdered Missing Indigenous Women and Relative Task Force, because they're fairly new in the bureaucracy of getting bills passed in the legislature and the lack of funding, we're still seeing that families are having a very hard time getting any money to help for searches, because the state also does not have search teams. So we're seeing individual tribal members and other people from the community who are trying to start their own search teams.
Right. And part of what you do pro bono is guide the families through this process. Talk to me about what you tell them and what advice you give them at the beginning of what can be a very long and frustrating journey.
I try to offer them support. I try to mentor them in being a voice for their loved one, and that allows them to be able to feel like they are in control of their cases. And it's really about having rallies and letting the families meet other family members of murdered and missing loved ones. And they have really grouped together. So every time there's a rally, those families get together. I also really tell them how they need to keep very detailed records. And I just have something in front of me that I ask the families to keep every person that they talk to, everyone, every date, what they provided to the police, and this is their tool. And so when we meet with law enforcement and tell them that we've already told the story, or I spoke with a detective from this agency and they told me this, it's really trying to keep a record of what has been told.
And I recognize the media plays a major role in this case and so many others. So you train people on how to reach out to the media, how to work with the media to get the case highlighted.
Correct. So what I do is I will sit with a family and I will actually take videos of them and I will teach them to try to do, 10-minute clips of what they want the media to know, all the way up to 1-minute clips. And also getting families ready to talk to the media, because oftentimes English is not their first language. So it can be difficult to go from, say, Navajo to English. And it's really a support system. And I really try to raise money for these families, because oftentimes the cost of searching for their loved ones and printing brochures and trying to make posters, they have to make the choice whether to eat sometimes or to pay their rent. And to me, no family member should have to do that, because everybody deserves equal justice. And I don't see that when it comes to Native American women and relatives.
I couldn't agree with you more, Darlene, and I hear the emotion in your voice, which is why you got involved. It's also why we started our Missing series, was recognizing that some cases get covered more than others, and every missing person matters. Ella Mae matters, and every single other person that we cover. In addition to the media training, which is so critical, I think it's also important to talk about the access to the internet. And on many reservations, Native Americans, like Ella Mae, may not have access to the internet, or their families might not have access to incorporate the social media army, as I call it, in trying to get the case out there. How do you address that component?
So my law firm has a TikTok page. It's under Dara Gomez Law, and we will put every family's member's case on our TikTok, and some of those views get 1 million views. And that has led to actually finding one of our loved ones who went missing. And so it's a tremendous source of being able to identify different areas of reservations, cities, and towns, because we also have to remember Native Americans go missing from urban areas as well.
And on reservations and in urban areas, the numbers really reveal that Native American women especially, and girls, are the victims of violence, of murder. They go missing. What do some of those numbers nationally show us? What research and data do we have that indicates this is an epidemic?
Well, Native women are 10 times more likely to be murdered than their white counterparts. 1 in 2 Native American women will be a victim of sexual assault. About 58% of women, Native American women, have suffered a violent crime, a violent assault on them. And those are just what is reported. And there's a lot of underreporting. So in the DOJ database, sometimes those numbers aren't correct either. There could be 5,800 reports that are put in that database, but really the numbers, I think, far exceed that. And we're looking at probably 15,000 or so. And then the number of actual missing and unidentified people in that system is very low, because if you look at New Mexico, the FBI has just started conducting a list that they put out every month of Navajo and Native American men and women who go missing from New Mexico. And I think the last month it was 168 individuals.
Wow.
And that's only in one state.
Yeah, I think the first step, Darlene, is recognizing there's an issue, and then we need action. So first of all, what legal tools are at the disposal for these families, if any? I mean, you're doing it pro bono, but how much more in terms of resources do people need, and where can they turn?
So unfortunately, I'm one of very few attorneys who do this work pro bono. And I just wanted to clarify, I practice Indian law. I am not Native American. I grew up, my family homesteaded the Hickory Apache Indian Reservation in 1876 before it was a reservation. So I've always grown up, and my community is about 95% Native American. But there's virtually no tools, because you have to remember that when a person goes missing, they're not eligible for any crime victim funds. And technically, it's not even a crime. So detectives and police officers just merely follow it as a missing person. And I think that's a huge problem. And we have to identify policies that need to be created for police departments. And I'd like to kind of tell you a little bit about 2 white women who went missing from New Mexico March of this year. They were from Ohio, and they went missing in Truth or Consequences, New Mexico. The police department in Ohio did extensive searches, so did the police department in Truth or Consequences, New Mexico. They had a lot of resources. The national media got a hold of this case. Why can't we get that for our Native women? And it's week after week that these women go missing, and so do their brothers and their two-spirit counterpart. And we can't even get someone who's going to take a report in a timely manner without victim blaming.
So what obligation do you see at the state and also the federal level, Darlene, to get involved? Are you optimistic that you're going to see some change now that the Interior Secretary is a Native American woman who says, this is a problem, I'm going to help?
Unfortunately, I do believe that the policies that have been put in place by the Secretary of the Interior, Doug Holland, are a starting point. But my families and the families I work with are not seeing any kind of immediate justice from it. And that goes to the murdered and missing unit that was created under the Bureau of Indian Affairs. To date, I don't know any cases that have been solved through that. There's no data that has been released. I know that some of the cases I represent are on that murdered and missing unit from the BIA, but the families have only spoken to BIA officers once or twice.
Darlene, my guess is, I know we have a lot of people watching online right now, and I hope this gets shared so that thousands more people are able to see it. If there's anyone watching who finds themselves trapped in a situation where they are up against a wall and not getting information, support, and help that they need to find their missing loved one, if they are a missing Indigenous person, where do they start? How do they reach you? What would be your message?
You know, my message would be is that going back to what you had asked about the trust responsibility of the federal government. The federal government owes Native American people who live on reservations, they have a trust responsibility through the FBI to investigate cases of murder. Any major crimes act, those cases need to be reviewed by the FBI. But I think that because each tribal nation is sovereign, that the power of those governors and those presidents and those chairmen and the National Congress of American Indians, they can band together and they can demand that they get the resources necessary to man their Bureau of Indian Affairs criminal investigators, that the FBI provide adequate training and adequate police officers and FBI agents to serve the reservations. And I think that if we see swift justice, that we will have the community answering more questions and giving more feedback when it comes to crime. Because if you're on your reservation and you know hardly anyone gets arrested for murders, then you're a sitting duck. If you tell someone what you saw or what happened, you could potentially be the next MMIWR victim. And until that changes, this is going to continue to occur. We could be here 10 years from now, 20 years from now. If our leaders do not demand a change, this is going to continue to happen.
Yeah.
And it's just sad.
It's a tragic cycle. Darlene, I appreciate so greatly that you are helping us shine a light on this, that we're having this conversation. I'd like to have more of them with you, and I'd like to cover more of these cases. So we're very appreciative to partner with you, not only on Ella Mae's case, but I'd like to hear more at some point about your friend who went missing years ago. I'm out of time, but tell me her name again, your friend from the early 2000s who disappeared.
Yes. Her name is Melissa Montoya. She went missing from the Hickory Apache Nation on St. Patrick's Day of 2001. And that town is Dulce, New Mexico. It's on the Colorado border in northwest New Mexico.
Darlene Gomez, thank you for the work you're doing once again. Thank you for being part of this discussion. To those online, we appreciate, as always, that you've tuned in. Please share this discussion on your social media pages so we can continue to highlight Ella Mae's case and so many others that are getting ignored. And if you have a missing persons case you think that we should be covering, send it to us at newsnationnow.com/missing. You can send us tips through our NewsNation app as well. I'm Marnie Hughes in Chicago. As always, thank you for being part of our continued Missing series, paying attention to these cases. Every missing person matters. I'll see you back here next week.